You are listening to #Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters. I am Regina Larko, and I started this podcast in 2016. That's when I sat down and did my first research. And that's often the story I share when I'm invited on other podcasts. But actually, there's much more to it. When I started the podcast, I had already committed to it. But when I'm really honest about where this passion for audio storytelling comes from, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I keep doing what I'm doing, I actually have to take you many years back. And this was something I had already meant to publish here on the channel around a year ago. Then I didn't. I felt I didn't want to take away from the stories I'm sharing of the amazing change makers that we usually feature. So I kind of parked my story on the website, hidden behind some links that you would have to know. Like you would really have to know where you look to find that story. But over the past few years, over the past year, while I had this story hidden on my website, I shared it with a few people, and that really made an impact on me because the way they reacted to it really encouraged me that this is a story that has to be on the podcast. So here it is. I'm just going to read this to you like an audiobook, my story in 4 chapters. And then there's a bonus chapter 5 as well. Before I start, I also want to say a huge thanks to Annabelle, who inspired me to finally put this story here on the channel. I hope you enjoy. If you're looking for more information about the work I am doing, please head over to #impact.com/support, where you find out more about my work and how I support others sharing their impactful stories, and where you can also find more information about #Impact podcast. You ready for this? I'm not sure if I am, and oh my God, just let me grab a sip of water before we get going. Okay, I think I'm ready. This is chapter 1, the story behind #Impact with Regina Larko. I often think about the dreams I had as a little girl around my life's story, what I would give for seeing the world through the eyes of my 8-year-old self just one more time. Just one moment of that childlike wonder, that feeling of being invincible. I'd love to hear young Regina's voice and what she would have to say to me today, now that I am living one of her dreams. The dream of sharing other people's impactful stories with the world, stories that matter to her and to me and my #Impact community. I'm not sure what she would say, but one thing I know for certain, she would smile. Fast forward from my 8-year-old self, and I'm standing on my university campus thinking about potential career options. One of my biggest dreams, going into broadcasting. Chapter 1. An arcaded courtyard in Vienna and a burst childhood dream. It was a very pleasant, sunny afternoon in early spring of 22. I was into my first year as a China Studies major and theater science minor at the University of Vienna. So long ago, I even forgot what that was called. That day, the university was hosting a big job fair for its students. They set up colorful stands in the gorgeous arcaded courtyard modeled on Italian Renaissance. Back then, I didn't even take note of the beauty of this sun-filled courtyard that I found myself in that day. Growing up in Vienna, I was used to being surrounded by buildings of monumental beauty. I instantly spotted the stand. The logo of the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation sparkled beautifully. It was one of my childhood dreams to go into broadcasting, and that moment, when I spotted the logo, memories of my first playful interviews as a 12-year-old with my younger cousin Bettina made me smile. I had always been particularly fascinated with radio. I loved listening to the radio. Being a radio host was, and that I was certain, the absolute coolest job in the world. So there I was, lurking around the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation stand for at least an hour, slowly moving closer, picking up brochures along the way from other companies I had no interest in at all, just to build up the courage to go over to the only stand that mattered to me. Finally, I approached two women working for the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation as they were chatting with each other. Walking up to them was, up until this point, one of the bravest things I had done in my life. What happened next is something I can still play back inside my head, even though this happened almost 20 years ago. I bravely asked them a question that I expected to open ears and doors to what could become maybe a future internship opportunity at the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. What does it take to make a career in broadcasting? I asked. And here is where my dream burst. The two women at the stand did not bother to turn my way. They obviously couldn't care less about talking to me. They definitely did not even bother to listen to me. My voice was not heard. They did not encourage me to apply for an internship as I had hoped for. They did not even bother to give me some more information material. They could not wait to get back to their conversation, which left me quickly withdrawing, feeling really defeated and sad. I gave up on my broadcasting dream that very day, standing in the middle of the gorgeous arcade courtyard of the University of Vienna. The sun was still shining, but all of a sudden, everything seemed gray. The story continues, and I'm going to click here on my website, here where I have been hiding that story all along, for chapter 2. Chapter 2. Living, loving, and hating a dream I didn't even know I had. I was defeated that day, but it didn't stay gray for a long time. You must know, I had many dreams as a child and even more as a teenager. But once I started university, well, the dreams and ambitions I had for my career just seemed endless. The broadcaster career dream, that was now past. So I fully dove into my newfound love for Chinese language and learning all about a country and culture that was so very different from my own. I wrote my master thesis about the Shanghai World Exhibition, and 2 years later, I was there, on site, in the heart of Shanghai, at the Austrian Pavilion's groundbreaking ceremony. I couldn't believe it. I made it. I was so proud to be there. It was also in Shanghai where I started working with a renowned international organization running civic education programs that made an impact on countless Chinese students it enabled to study abroad. I was organizing delegation visits for high-ranking European leaders, And I was sitting at the table with renowned scientists as they debated China's changing role in the world. I got promoted quickly, moving to the head office in the capital, Beijing. It was such an exciting time, and I learned so much from every conference I organized. I was living a dream I didn't even know I had before arriving in China, and I loved it. Until I didn't. 5 years in, and I started questioning a lot of the work I was doing, wondering if it really made a big impact. And in all these meetings, with all these amazing, smart people, mostly men, and most of them at least 20 years older than me, I always felt silent, too shy to share my own opinion, my own perspective. Just a year earlier, I did not mind being the quiet observer and learner, just taking notes and writing reports, but something had changed. I did not feel like that shy girl anymore that had started out with the organization 5 years ago. I felt that I deserved another role, one where I would not just be executing and organizing, but where I would really have a say. I wanted to get my voice heard too. It was also a time when pollution levels in Beijing became unbearable, and the only thing that could really cheer me up was my quiet lunch break, listening to my favorite podcast, an Austrian radio show, the one I listened to already as a teenager, the one that had always inspired me to become a radio journalist as well back all those years back. Many years before I had bravely walked up to that job fair stand. I don't really know where the thought came from. It might have been my frustration with my job I felt that day, or the pollution making me angry with what we humans have done to our environment. But all of a sudden it hit me. What if I could start my own radio channel and broadcast and tell stories I am really passionate about? Meet inspiring people that make our world a better place, people that fight pollution, fight for equality, stand up for what's right. I got so excited and felt a joy and energy rush through my body that I had not felt for a long time. But I did not jump into my podcasting idea right there and then. It took a relocation to Hong Kong and another year of exploring, searching, and lots of questioning myself and my abilities. It was a confusing time, but it was important nonetheless, as I started to connect with people running media startups as well as established media. It gave me a taste of both worlds, and it helped me find my role and voice in it. Are you ready for chapter 3? I'm gonna click open that page. Oh. Chapter 3. A letter to my younger self. Little did I know that my very first podcast guest would have had the answer to all my questions. If I would have known her then, in that year of my big search, oh, that would have been amazing. But when I spoke to Sue Toomey in episode 1 of #Impact Podcast, she shared a very moving story about herself and how she made the move from a corporate career into the NGO space.
Decided to make the move to Hands-On Hong Kong. And I was at a wonderful function with the Women's Foundation where they had people writing letters to their younger self. And it was women who were sort of in their mid-stage of career who were writing letters to themselves in their 20s. And they were giving themselves great advice about take more risk and don't be afraid and make more connections. And I thought to myself, while sitting there, what would my letter to myself today, my letter for myself 20 years from now, to me today, what would it say to me? And I really thought long and hard about that. And it was, stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, stop mulling over it, and do it, because time goes by quickly. And if you don't actually get off your butt and actually do it, you're going to regret it.
But one day, before even hearing those powerful words, I did exactly what she said. I just did it. I just started my podcast. I committed. At least, this is how I keep telling people when they ask me how I got going with my podcast. I say, I committed and then I just started. But the more I think about it and reflect on that process that led me from a smoky lunch break in Beijing to starting my podcast years later, I understand that what I was really doing was finding the courage to listen to my own aspirations and started believing in myself to go after my dream of broadcasting. I cannot even say the word. Maybe that's why I doubted my dream to begin with. So let me say that again. Finding the courage to listen to my own aspirations and started believing in myself to go after my dream of broadcasting, no matter what other people would think. That's when magic started happening. That's when I reached out to my very first podcast guests, and that's when I sat down for my first recording. A recording where Sue shared how she found the courage to change her career after thinking about what her 20-year-older self would say to herself today. This was the first recording I did for my podcast. Needless to say, I was so nervous, too busy, constantly checking recording levels. But when she shared that story about that letter that she wrote to herself, my heart just stopped. I got goosebumps all over my body, and it resonated so much that I sat down to write a letter to my younger self that very day. And I keep writing and collecting these letters to myself as a reminder for the journey that brought me to this moment. The moment where the hashtag impact story begins. Are you ready for chapter 4? And do you hear that airplane just going over my house? Chapter 4. The voices that matter. This story brings us to the day where hashtag impact begins. As I thought about making an impact myself and how I could empower and support others to do the same, I know that there is value in revisiting one's childhood dreams, even if they burst, and thinking about living dreams we didn't even know we had, and in documenting the process by writing letters to ourselves. In each of these moments, I was trying to find my voice. It was only when I understood that my voice mattered and that I mattered, that I allowed myself to start living a new dream. A new dream. I started understanding that I could make an impact with my work, and that I could be the one that could define what impact would mean to me. I understood that it was no one's job except my own to stand up for my own voice and to get it heard, because everyone deserves to have a voice and to leave a mark on the world, you included. Every voice and contribution counts. Everyone can make an impact, and everyone's story deserves to be told. This is what hashtag impact is all about. Helping people share their stories in an intimate, authentic way so they can be confident, stand out, and inspire positive change. Here in Hong Kong, from where I'm recording right now, but also in the rest of the world. Just imagine a world where everyone can confidently use their own voice to make meaningful connections with a global, collaborative community of like-minded individuals who together are making a positive social impact. That is my vision for #impact. A vision that I'm so proud of. A vision that is guiding me through those moments when a doubting voice inside my head questions where this will all lead. And this brings me to you. I believe it is time to get your story and the impact that you're making in the world heard. It's time to get your voice heard, because your voice, your story, and the impact you are making matters. It really does. Don't wait another day, is what one of my good friends told me when I dreaded publishing the first episode of #impact podcast. She actually screamed it at me. Celia, remember? Because I had been procrastinating for days, weeks really, to go ahead. Don't wait another day. It was the best advice and encouragement I ever received. If you ever dreamt about making a podcast, if you ever dreamt about making an impact, then I want to support you on this journey. And you can find resources to do that and a community that helps you to make that impact over at #impact.com/support. So what about that chapter 5? I haven't written it. And I know I should put it in writing, because of course the journey continued after I wrote all these chapters. And since I put my voice out there, started my podcast, connected with all these change makers, found so much inspiration on how they keep going, the grit, the resilience they are showing, there's never a day where I'm not inspired by the people that I got to feature on #impact over these past years. But the story evolved. I also started to work with people that wanted to get their voice out there on their own channel, on their own podcasts. And that has been, I don't even find words. It means so much to me that over this past years, I could also become part of other people's impactful podcast journeys, working together with these purpose-driven organizations and individuals that, just like me, see the incredible power of sharing stories in this intimate way using audio. And I don't know, could I give you some examples just of conversations I had with the people that I supported starting their own channels? Well, it's very similar to mine, actually. We all have to overcome this feeling of, does it actually matter what I have to say? We look for other people's advice. Sometimes that advice even discourages us to go ahead with an idea that we maybe have around our impact project. And what I really found so valuable for the people I got to work with on their own podcasts, as well as when I look at my own podcasting journey, where I now also have these wonderful co-hosts that have become part of the production, is that moment of reflecting and looking inside, listening inside to why does it matter to you to make this impact? What is it that drives you? A really great thing that Annabelle shared with me, how she reflected on when she heard these 4 chapters the first time, that really got me thinking was, I always thought it was just about me trying to find my voice and being worried if anyone would care to listen. But then she also said, through these other experiences that you made, maybe at that time when you didn't really know if you should, or when the time when you didn't dare to put your voice out there, maybe at that time also you were not really sure yet what were the stories that you wanted to share. And I think she really has a point there. All our life experiences form us. And just the other day I was talking to my husband about that. Like, how did we even end up here? I mean, that's a whole different story on how I and my husband found each other that I'm not going to share here now, but let me know if you want to know. So I make a bonus episode on that one as well, because it is intriguing. But these little things, these little decisions we make in our lives that then lead us to the places we end up in, physically, but also emotionally. And I know this was now not really a very well thought through chapter 5. And Annabelle, I apologize if this was not what you were looking for when you encouraged me to continue writing my story. I will though. I will sit down and actually put this in a proper format at one point. But what I want to encourage all of you to do today, is just to listen inside to what does your heart say? Where do you see your place in, making an impact and sharing then that impact and that voice and that perspective that you bring to this world with others? Yeah, and with that, finally, with a 1-year delay, the story behind #impact is a wrap. And please do reach out to me always if you have questions or comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can find me at hello@impact.com. Say hi there. And if you want the support that I mentioned, just head over to impact.com/support. Thank you so much for taking an interest in my story with #impact. And I talk to you very soon. Bye.